Today, we're going to be talking about the top 10 mistakes that people make, beginners, pros, whatever, when it comes to interior detailing. And then once you know what the mistakes are, you know how to avoid them. But interiors can be a very, very tricky part of the car. And in fact, even when it's clean, a customer can get in and it still kind of feels dirty. And also the opposite is true. Sometimes you don't really do much on an interior and you could do a couple quick hacks and the customer feels like you detailed the whole thing. So I'm going to go through some of these tips, and these really aren't like surface level tips. These are lessons that I've actually learned from doing it wrong, and doing it wrong very good. So if you're not good at interiors or you're worried about making mistakes, don't worry. I was right there with you, and I only compiled this list because of these are the mistakes that I've made over the years. So the first one really is cleaning without doing an overview of like what the different materials are in the car and then what materials you're actually dealing with. From piano black plastics to coated or non-coated leather. If you're doing something like a King Ranch truck, are you dealing with cloth seats? Are you dealing with fabric seats? Are you dealing with low pile carpet on something like a Kia or a Hyundai? Are you dealing with a high pile carpet, something on like a Rolls Royce? There's so many different surfaces in a car, and just like you would with the exterior of a car, kind of creating a game plan and doing an overview of like, okay, there's leather on the dash, it's not all plastic, or there's a lot of piano black. Man, I can't tell you how many times I've accidentally messed up piano black because I just went too aggressive and I was moving from one surface to another, right? And then you end up scratching the black surface and then you got to polish it out, or it just creates a nightmare, right? So I always told myself too, if I'm not sure, do a test area first. That's what we do on the exterior of the car, right? And so that's one lesson that I had to teach myself is like, hey, the same rules apply that you use on the outside of the car for the inside. You're just dealing with a lot more or a lot different surfaces, a lot more different surfaces than you might be dealing with on the outside. But just like on the outside, if you're not sure how a chemical is going to react, you may try it in a small, inconspicuous area first. And so the same is true. You know, if you don't know what the surface is, if you're not sure if it's coated or uncoated, definitely try a small, inconspicuous area first. But this is definitely something, oh gosh, I've had so many, it almost pains me to talk about. I've had so many mistakes that I've made on interiors, even simple stuff like, and we'll get into it later, but using an APC on everything, right? Carpets, just, oh, it's an all-purpose cleaner. It can clean every purpose, right? And there's really some bad things that can happen if you do that. And that was, all my years of experience dealing with interiors is, really went into consideration when I was developing the complete cabin cleaner to work on a bunch of different surfaces. So the next mistake that a lot of people make, and I have one particular detail that stands out to me that I made this mistake, is over wetting the fabrics and the seats, especially if you live in an area that you have weather, so it's colder and you're doing interiors through the winter. I've even seen people use heaters in sidecars, which is a great idea if you are living in that kind of environment. Obviously, be careful. That can create its own host of different issues. But sometimes we think oversaturating, more cleaner, more water is better. But the problem is that it can lead to wicking. It can lead to mildew, which is exactly what happened to me. I was doing this minivan. It was completely thrashed. I was just going to town with my extractor. And I think actually at the time my extractor was starting to break. But this particular detail that I did was actually what got me away from using my extractor as much and kind of going into more steam, because I just put down way too much water. And then it was, even though I'm in Southern California, it was in the winter time. And so the car just didn't have enough time to air out, and it led to mildew and a stink in the car. And sometimes also some, I call them like ghost stains. Stains can actually reappear after they dry, which is really difficult. So contrary to some of these videos that we see online, you really aren't pressure washing the inside of the car. So sometimes less is actually more, especially on some of these really difficult interior cloth seats that we've been seeing for the past decade in cars. They're really tricky to clean, and oversaturating them can actually lead to more of these ghost stains. And so you have to be really tricky. So similar to the outside of the car too, where you would work in stages. You don't polish before you clay. If there's heavy contamination, you kind of work in, you wouldn't polish before you wash the car on the outside. That'd be weird, right? And so again, same rules apply for the interior. You need to work in levels and stages. And so that is one thing that was really hard for me to learn, especially when, early on in my detailing career, when I was dealing with nastier cars, the nastier the car, the more aggressive you want to go in on it. And that's where that more water, more liquid, and we think that it's going to be cleaner, but that's actually wrong. And sometimes you can get not away with, but you actually get a better result with less. So, so work on, chemical action and agitation, not flooding. So what that means is, just like we pre-soak on the outside of the car, pre-soaking on the inside of the car could save you a ton of time as well. Use that same pump sprayer, use the complete cabin cleaner, pre-soak the carpets or the seats with a little bit of liquid, maybe agitate a little bit with like the Scrub Buddy pad, even just a microfiber towel. Some people for seats will even put an old, clean but old microfiber cutting pad on a DA and do the seats like that. Those seats that are kind of like in the cheaper cars, I would call it, where the fabric just honestly sucks to clean. But pre-soaking is really, really good to do on interiors, especially on nasty interiors, and less is more. So, and kind of in that same vein of working in stages and levels, sometimes how I like to think of interiors in stages is sometimes I will do kind of my like dry phase first, or kind of my first initial like vacuum and go over. I'll kind of try to sweep things out, use my little detail brushes, keep everything dry. Maybe this is where you like blow out the cracks and crevices. You're doing your initial vacuum. One, as kind of a tangent squirrel right here. One thing that I used to think, and then when I changed my kind of mindset on it, it was much better and actually just saved myself a lot of frustration, is I used to think that you only can vacuum the car one time. But what I realized is actually if you vacuum the car 2 or 3 times, you're actually going to get a way better result. And so my first initial phase of cleaning an interior, again, if we're talking about, we're talking about not a weekly maintenance detail. We're talking about kind of a deeper detail here. And so my first phase is this kind of like getting out all the trash, doing the initial vacuum, blowing out all the cracks and crevices, blowing out underneath the seats, brushing some of the seams, kind of just a bulk vacuum, I guess. And then I can go back and start introducing some, chemicals, some water, some wetness, because sometimes those stains will reimagine themselves. And so having it too wet in there too can mess things up, and then it can create mud on the inside. It could just be a mess. So starting with a dry phase, kind of getting the big bulky chunks and trash out is great before you go in with any like cleaning products. So I would definitely recommend that. As I mentioned earlier, number 4, using an APC on everything. So APCs are very powerful, but honestly, often they're just too harsh if they're not diluted down correctly. And again, I had the mindset that stronger is better, right? And we want to get in there and do it. But APCs can dry out leather. They could definitely dry out plastics and moldings. They can leave a residue. They can actually stain carpet and make tan carpet yellow. I've actually had that happen to me a few times, which is not ideal when you're trying to clean something. I guess, yeah, it would be better, but sometimes on tan carpets, the APCs I'd be using would discolor them. They would clean them, but then they would discolor them. So I try to only use APCs, on really tough textured or non-sensitive areas. So think like brake pedal, kick panels, stuff like that. But honestly, I really tried to, and I used to be a big user of APCs on interiors, and in developing the complete cabin cleaner, I really tried to develop a cleaner that, because the complete cabin cleaner is pH neutral, so it's not going to dry out any of those interior plastics. And I really focused on that. I needed something that was aggressive and can clean a really dirty, carpet or seat, but then can be diluted down, even down to like 20-1 as more of a maintenance product. And so that's exactly what the complete cabin cleaner is. And it's super, it's not aggressive when it doesn't need to be, right? But it can be aggressive when it is. So definitely, if you're using APCs on interiors, I would definitely highly recommend trying to get away from that. And using something like the complete cabin cleaner will really help you with that. So number 5 is not sitting where your customer sits and how they will sit in the car. So in not doing this, sometimes you really skip some of the high touch areas, weirdly enough. Something like the mirror in the visor, sometimes the rear view mirror, sometimes just the headliner right where they go to grab the visor gets dirty. And so there's all these little missed touch points. Sometimes like the blinker, and that's not as common to miss that, but sometimes the seat belts sometimes get missed. The door handle part where you go to open the door sometimes the front part of the seat where someone may have extra oil on their body or sunscreen or something like that, and you can't really necessarily see it unless you start looking for it. But what I like to do is I like to sit how my customer is going to sit in the car and then look around, right? So I'll sit in the driver's seat, I'll even close the door, and I'll just start moving stuff around, right? And maybe the shifter boot is another one. You are obviously detailing the car when it's in park, but when they go to shift it into drive, if right in that shifter boot it's full of crumbs because you didn't turn the car on and put it into drive, to see that's a big missed area, and that could really... that seems like a detailed point, and if you miss that, it can really change the conception of if you actually clean the car, right? So again, the carpets could look spotless, the seat could look spotless, everything could be dialed in, the windows could be clean on the inside, but then they go to start their car and put it into drive, and there's crumbs in the shifter boot. That's pretty bad, right? So, and again, I'll sit in the passenger seat and do the same thing. Open the glove box, open up the center console, flip down the visor. And I go around the whole entire car and do that. Even in a minivan, I'll sit in the third row because sometimes you miss the cup holder in the third row, or you just miss what you can't see from certain angles, right? And so that's definitely one thing I would do too, to help not miss those kind of key areas that people see when they're actually in the car. So... number 6, overdressing interiors. Shiny is not clean, right? And really, I think we're past the point of this, but most people don't like shiny dashboards. They attract dust, they glare in the sunlight, so it's actually dangerous. And shiny interiors are just something that used car dealerships do, or car dealerships do to make the car seem cleaner, but people actually hate that, especially as you start to touch those areas like the door panels that are shiny and the shine starts to wear off, then you have a splotchy interior. So I think, shiny interiors are a thing of the past, and I think matte interiors feel new. I will say, if you do something, add a little bit of shine, or not even shine, but kind of restore some of the plastics inside. Sometimes as cars age, they just don't look as fresh. And so sometimes what I'll do is I'll use All Dressed Up to give a natural kind of OEM matte finish, but that it gives it a OEM matte finish by adding some All Dressed Up because the panels are actually dried out or sun damaged or something like that. So, but high shine is definitely not where it's at when it comes to interiors. And my customers Hate it. Absolutely hate it. It actually devalues the detail. They think it's actually cheaper the higher the shine you have. All right, number 7, neglecting the vents and the HVAC. So, these vents get dust trapped in there, but also mildew and odors. And sometimes, when I started using steam over the extractor, I would, hit the vents with a little bit of steam. And you see people pumping steam through the vents because it's cool as it exits all the other vents. But the risk in doing that, again, if you're living in an environment that it's really cold, is that you could actually get residue, moisture in there, and it can actually smell like mildew and odor. So again, even if everything looks clean, if the customer starts up the car and there's a musty smell, it kind of ruins the whole entire detail, right? So if you're going to do that with the steam around the vents, make sure you kind of follow up with some compressed air or maybe even a little vacuum, and really try to get in there some sort of blower on low, and try to neutralize any buildup that may have gotten in there. But those videos look really cool when you're pumping the steam through all the HVAC vents, and it's coming out other vents, and you're blowing it in the passenger side, it's coming out the driver's side. It looks really cool, but you definitely don't want to overdo it. When it comes to number 8, just don't use cheap stuff, right? So I've tried to use, cheaper towels. I've tried to use cheaper brushes. I've tried to use, like I said, an all-purpose cleaner for everything. And so just it's not a place that you want to cheap out. There's too many sensitive materials in cars, in newer cars. They seem to be getting cheaper and cheaper materials. So definitely using, good quality microfiber towels and good quality brushes and everything like that can really, really help save the detail. All right, number 9 is a big one, and that's when it comes to odor removal. I don't care what other thing is out there, if it's a little air freshener that you stick underneath the seat, a machine that you let run. Ozone is really the best, most effective way to neutralize and completely eliminate an odor from a car. But a lot of times when doing this, people forget that you need to neutralize the source. So if an Uber driver calls you and someone barfed in their car, just sticking an ozone machine in there will help, but the smell will come back because the barf is still there, or the residue of the barf is still there. Same if there's your dog poops in the car, or dog pees, or you had rats or something like that. You have to fully clean that area and then run an ozone machine. But I see a lot of these other, odor eliminator things online, and I'm like, it doesn't make sense, because you could just buy an ozone generator. It's significantly less expensive and significantly more powerful and actually gets the work done. But if you do get a call or you're dealing with kind of an odor in your car, you can't just mask the odor with an air freshener. You have to remove the cause. And so that's what I used to always tell people. You have to remove the cause of the smell, whether that was, a rat inside, or, an Uber driver and someone threw up inside, or baby's milk spill or something like that. You have to clean it. This is where the cabin cleaner also comes in really handy, because it is jam-packed with odor neutralizers in the complete cabin cleaner formula, and then hitting it with an ozone generator will completely eliminate any odors and smells that are in the car. But you have to remove the source. If you oversaturate a car and it smells like mildew in the car, you're going to have to re-shampoo the car to get rid of that smell all the way. Re-shampoo it lightly, don't oversaturate. Again, run an ozone machine. You might have to run an ozone machine a couple times, or you might have to run it for a longer duration or something like that. But again, removing the source first is going to make sure you effectively remove the entire smell. So, number 10, working without a system or an order, just like I talked about at the top of the video, making sure you have kind of your mindset right and what different surfaces are in the car, and then a game plan working in layers, but really creating a flow top to bottom, back to front, left to right. Dividing things into zones is really helpful. So like, driver, passenger, rear, cargo, front, trunk, whatever. But really having a system helps build consistency, and then that consistency builds speed and professionalism over time. Interiors are a place that people reach out to me all the time, and they constantly say how long they take way too long, and I worked all day just on the interior, and now I'm losing money. If you're a detailer, or maybe you're just a DIYer doing it at home and you don't want to spend all day Saturday working on the inside of your wife's car, right? But if you create a system, create a flow, create a game plan of not only what surfaces are in the car, but how you're going to tackle this, and then you start tackling it in layers, just like I talked about earlier, it will really speed up the process. And then if you're a professional detailer, obviously getting stuff done in a efficient manner shows professionalism, right? So definitely working with a system or an order can really help you, and it can help you be more just deliver a better job too, because if you're just randomly bouncing all over the car, you're inevitably going to have missed spots. You're going to waste a bunch of time. You're going to be going back over things that you already did. And so really having a system is going to help that. And I will say too, just kind of as we wrap this up, like cleanliness is also felt, just not seen. And this is where a lot of my products aren't scented heavily, but the Complete Cabin Cleaner, I feel like, has a perfect scent, a perfect fresh scent. And some people have even written in and told me that they just do a couple extra sprays in a car when they're done with the detail, when they're even done with the simple car wash, because it gives the customer opens the car and they smell it and they're like, oh my gosh, if it smells clean, it must be clean. So just remember that cleanliness is also felt, it's experienced, it's not just seen. But again, making sure you have streak-free glass on the inside, the seat belts, the neutral scent. You don't want it overpowering either, but it gives the impression of a professional job. So sometimes perception is reality, really. And so helping and offering just a slight scent really helps set that perception some. If you learned something new, drop a comment below. Let me know. What's your biggest interior detailing mistake or lesson that you've learned? These are honestly my 10, and I've just learned these through the years. So if you want to try what I talked about, the Complete Cabin Cleaner, all dressed up, microfiber towels, Scrub Buddy pad, I will link them all below, of course. And you can check everything out over on jimbosdetailing.com. And I also have everything up on Amazon as well, which I will also link below. So hope you guys learned something from that. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.